Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of our corporate sponsorship webinar series hosted by Cosmo Sports and Entertainment. My name is Evan Colborn. I'm the Director of Business Development with Cosmo Sports and Entertainment. The series is brought to you by Central Counties Tourism and Sport Durham. So, very special thanks to both those groups for putting on this webinar series and for allowing us to host it. Just before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. If this is your first time and you haven't joined us for a webinar so far, we strongly encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can do so by submitting them through the live chat, which is, if you're watching on the YouTube page, you can see it in the top right corner of the screen. If you don't see it, you may need to exit out of that full screen mode, and you'll see it there. You do have to have a Google account, and you do have to be signed into that Google account to submit questions. But if that applies to you, that's the easiest way. If not, if you're not signed in or if you don't have a Google account, you can always submit questions to us by email at any time, whether it's during the stream or afterwards. Best email there is info@cosmosports.com. Or you can go to our team page and you can see all of our staff there and all of our emails, including mine and Carrie's. So please feel free to submit any questions that you have about this topic or sponsorship in general, really, to that email address, and we'd be happy to answer those. So if you are submitting questions through the live chat, there is a bit of a delay on the stream. So strongly encourage you to submit those questions as you think of them. That way, when we get to the end, if I've already wrapped up on my end and you wait till the end to submit your question, may not have a chance to get to it. So submit those questions throughout. Great. So this is episode 9. For those that have been following along, our first 8 episodes really took a really in-depth look at the whole sponsorship sales cycle and in total. And we're going to focus our last 2 episodes on some really unique topics to sponsorship, with today's really being all about digital sponsorship, which has been a really emerging area for the field over the last couple of years. And in 2 weeks' time, our final episode, we're going to take a real in-depth look at naming rights and really that marquee inventory and how that stuff needs to be treated a little bit differently and how the sales process changes a little bit with things like that. So and that final episode will be on May 30th. So coming up in 2 weeks, same time at 2 p.m. So today's topic, again, looking at digital sponsorship. So what we're really going to focus on is, first and foremost, why is digital a big opportunity? What are some of the unique opportunities that having this new digital inventory offers organizations and properties? We're also going to discuss how to think about your digital assets. Again, it's a little bit different, not exactly like the traditional sponsorship approach, but as we'll discuss, it's really a lot more similar than it is different. So we'll discuss how to kind of think about that and how to organize that. And lastly, we're going to take a look at some examples of some different types of digital sponsorships, so you can actually see and get a feel for what it looks like and what is appealing to sponsors. All right. So first, really to kick things off, we're going to talk a lot about why. Why is digital a big opportunity? What opportunities does it afford properties and those looking to drive revenue through sponsorship in particular? So I doubt this is going to be breaking news for anybody who's watching this, but digital media is a big thing. It's and it continues to grow. Purely by how many people it reaches, and then how much time people are spending on digital media. So this chart here, taken from We Are Social, just really highlights some metrics in terms of digital media in North America, just in the last calendar year. So as you can see, 73% of the population, uses the internet. 64% are active on social media. 57% are active on social media on a mobile device. One thing I find really interesting about this, 106% of the population with a mobile connection, suggesting that there's more mobile connected devices out there than there are actual people. So mobile in particular, but digital just in general, are a huge part of people's lives nowadays. So again, probably not breaking news to anybody that's watching or listening to this episode, but something that really just can't be denied anymore. And if you look at just the growth year over year in terms of digital and social media and all that kind of stuff, you can see, largest the largest growth year over year really is in that social use. So most people by this point are connected to the internet, and as you can see, not a ton of growth, relatively speaking, in terms of mobile connections. A lot of people have their devices that are connected, but there continues to be a lot of growth in how many people are active on social media, and how many people are active on social media through their mobile device. So continue to see growth in both of those areas. But really, suffice it to say, digital media and in particular mobile are huge parts of people's lives in North America, and likely not slowing down anytime soon. So when it comes to sponsorship, the question really is, why is this relevant to us? What about this shift toward the attention being given to digital? Uh, how does that affect us as those trying to sell sponsorship and drive sponsorship revenue? Well, firstly, as a property, if you're building a strong and loyal audience on your own digital channels, you immediately are going to extend your property's reach to that audience beyond those event days. So a lot of people that are listening on the whether you're watching live on the webinar, if you're listening to this recording afterwards, you may represent a organization that's a one-off event. It happens once per year. Well, if that is the case for your sponsors, that's a long time to go in between touch points with your audience. So by having digital and having a really strong audience on your digital channels, you immediately extend your reach to the days leading up to your event, to the days immediately after your event, and really throughout the calendar year. So and really the second bullet there, 34% of engagement with sports brands occurring out of the season. Now this may kind of seem like a no-brainer that there's going to be some engagement outside of the season, but we really when you really see that a third of the year is happening outside of the engagement is happening outside of the season, it tells us that there's that ability for digital to help us reach our audience throughout the entire calendar year. You can also see the second bullet there, and these stats are pulled from a company called Listen First Media that really examines social media and digital media sponsorship and things like that. But as you can see, they found through their study that less than 1% of the native content that properties, teams, organizations are putting out is tied to a sponsor. So what that tells us is, that there's tremendous amount of attention being given to digital channels, that it extends throughout the entire calendar year. So it's not just dedicated to the event days, like more of the traditional sponsorship assets are, which are really tied to the event days. And less than 1% of all of that stuff that we're putting out there is tied to a sponsor. So there's a really big opportunity in terms of being able to start capturing some of that value that we're putting out there on our digital channels. And really to date, digital has been an afterthought for sponsorship, and it's really been incredibly undervalued. So again, as we see consumers' attention shift more and more to digital, the value is shifting, or at least it's spreading to digital in addition to your more traditional sponsorship assets. So there's a lot of sponsors are placing a lot of value on digital. People, obviously, through the numbers, are placing a lot of value on digital, just as a from example of where they're using their time. So it makes perfect sense that us as events and properties, can capitalize on that. You may recognize this chart. We've used this a couple of times throughout the course, but this was taken from the Canadian Sponsorship Landscape Study and talks about the biggest opportunities and threats. And the question really being, what keeps you up at night about sponsorship? And this was posed to sponsors, properties, agencies across the industry. And as you can see, across the board, the number one concern is demonstrating ROI. And a major challenge towards demonstrating ROI has always been data measurement and really tying that data back to the sponsor's goals. So the nice thing about digital is that it offers a tremendous amount of data, typically more than any of us can even begin to consume and analyze to its full potential. So as digital assets become more of a focus for sponsors, the ability to measure the results will be appealing to both sides. Again, you may recognize this chart. We've used this one several times throughout the course, but tying it back to what do sponsors want? What are they looking for? And how can we fulfill those needs as properties looking to sell sponsorship? Well, we know that there's a consistent gap between what is being rated as important for sponsors and then what's being provided. And for those categories that we've talked a lot about in the on the webinar about measurement and analytics is those recall stats, loyalty stats, the concluding report. the info and the results on objectives. So again, because digital has this objective, tangible data that's built into all the platforms that we're using, it helps us as the properties that are trying to position ourselves to these sponsors. It helps us with capturing some of that information that we can then relay back to the sponsors to show them this is how these were the objectives that you said to us at the outset about why you were doing the sponsorship, and here's how it performed based on the data that we have. So again, because digital offers that data, it's helping to close that gap between what's listed as important and what's provided. So again, should be really appealing to both sides. So this chart was taken from IEG and ESP Properties. They do an annual survey of sponsorship decision makers, and in this case, they've asked them, how valuable are the following benefits to you? And in this case, they've represented by those that have ranked it as a factor of a 9 or 10 on a 10-point scale. So it's obviously really important to them and really valuable to them. Well, as you can see from the chart here, it's two of the top four, at least, are directly related to digital. Number two, 42% of respondents saying that a presence in digital, social, and mobile media is a really valuable benefit to them. And then on the fourth on there is the rights to property content for digital and other uses. So you can see that a big reason that sponsors are they're placing a lot of value on getting that presence on the properties, digital and social, but they also want to be able to leverage the content that your property offers for their own digital channels, or even for your own. So you can see, very important. Sponsors are placing a lot of value on digital and social and mobile in particular with their sponsorship. So to really sum that up, digital, mobile, it's where the attention is, as the numbers illustrate. That's where more and more people are spending more and more of their time. And that's really what sponsorship is all about. It's about trying to get in front of somebody in a meaningful way, get your message out to somebody in a meaningful way. So where people's attention is obviously going to be an important factor with sponsorship. Secondly, it's been tremendously undervalued. As we can see from the one stat from Listen First, less than 1% of the native content that is put out there by sports teams anyways, which probably applies to all the other, whether it's festivals and events or causes or amateur sport, whatever it is, probably very similar in the sense that most of the stuff we're putting out there is not being monetized through sponsorship. So, and the stuff that is, typically, what we've seen anyways is that it's been really undervalued. It's been a throw in at the, a little bit of bonus stuff you can add in with at least the way properties are looking at it, still placing a lot more of the value on the traditional assets, where the shift is happening more towards digital. We know that it helps provide more insight through the data that's baked into a lot of the platforms that we're going to be using for digital, for the fulfillment, that we can start to really get a better picture in terms of the ROI, the ROO that sponsors are placing on their sponsorship programs. So having that data is going to be helpful to both sides to see what's working, what's not, how can we tweak, how can we optimize, and so forth. And lastly, sponsors want it. We know from the survey of sponsorship decision makers that at least two of the top four benefits that they place a lot of value on have to do directly with digital. So there's really no denying it that sponsors are looking for it. So why deny that? This quote here, taken from IEG ESP Properties, just talks about the landscape in general. That in general, sponsorship is moving from just a collection of siloed assets more towards how can I cater to an audience. It's less about awareness. Now it's more about engagement. It's less about logos and signage, and now it's about content and experiences. So the content is the big thing that has to do with or digital, is a big thing that has to do with delivering that content, to sponsors. So it's a really important aspect to sponsorship going forward. All right. So hopefully that's enough to convince you that digital is a big opportunity for your property to increase sponsorship revenue. And as sponsorship continues to evolve and become more and more sophisticated marketing mechanism, digital is going to be a key driver for sponsors and properties alike. So if we all agree that digital offers a big opportunity, then the next natural question to start thinking about is how to go about unlocking its potential. So for those of you who have watched some of the earlier episodes of this series, you may recall in one of the first episodes when we described some common terminology that's utilized in sponsorship. Yeah, and it was illustrated through this graphic here. So, organizations is in our case here, we use the Brampton Beast Hockey Club as an example. That's the overall organization. And within that organization, they're going to have different properties. So in our case, with the Brampton Beast, we look at that and say, okay, we've got our in arena, we've got our in arena properties, and that includes some backlit signage and our video board and the rink boards and PA announcements. A lot of those traditional type of sponsorship assets. In the case of the Beast, we also have access to some community rinks and have some assets that are in that property. So very traditional sponsorship assets there: rink board, signage, on ice logos, things like that. But digital and web is its own property, and we look at that and say, okay, within our digital and web portfolio, we've got our website, we've got our social media, we've got email, we've got an app. So it's really a property. Now, digital in a lot of ways can be a bit overwhelming and intimidate people, particularly if it's not something that you're a regular user of in your own life. So to ease those concerns, just keep in mind that digital is really just another property in your organization's sponsorship portfolio. And again, within the digital property, there's your assets. And it may feel like there's new ones that are coming out every day and it's really hard to keep up, but you want to not let that overwhelm you or intimidate you. That digital is just another property. It's got its assets and those are changing quite regularly, but it's not recreating the wheel or anything. So another concept that really tends to overwhelm people about digital is what to charge for it. So if you're working with a long-standing organization and maybe your prices and assets have remained pretty similar year over year, it can be a bit intimidating to now have this entire new property that you have to price. So keep in mind that pricing is an art and a science. So even if it's digital, and yes, there's a lot more objective and tangible data that comes with it, it's still an art and a science, and no one has it down to an exact science of how to determine the value of your assets. As we showed in an earlier episode, this formula really tries to capture what it means to assign a value to a particular piece of inventory. And really the key to unlocking the true value of your organization's sponsorship opportunities lies in the third variable in the top part of the equation there, brand value. Now, this is really what it's trying to do is capture what the difference is between buying digital ads through Facebook or Google versus investing in a sponsorship with your organization through digital. Obviously, Facebook and Google, they have tremendous reach. As we saw earlier from how many people just in North America are utilizing social media on a day-to-day basis, Google and Facebook are going to have the reach, and unlikely that any property that's listening to this webinar is going to have any reach that actually competes with Facebook or Google. But again, it comes down to that brand value. There's a value in a sponsor deciding to do digital sponsorship through your property that's different from Facebook and Google, and it's that brand value, it's that brand association with your organization. The ongoing challenge is that your brand value differs from person to person. It's always a moving target. So again, it's an art and a science to try to understand what is the net difference between placing an ad through Google or putting that same type of creative and attaching it to my brand. What's the net difference in value there? And that's where we need to be unlocking that value. Again, wanted to illustrate here that the point is, we use this exact same formula to place a value on all of your traditional sponsorship assets, your signage, your activation booths, your PA announcements, your website logos, all things like that. It's really the same process when it comes to digital. Your CPMs and your audience size, those are the things you want to try to figure out, and benchmarking a CPM against a Google or a Facebook or an Instagram. Because they all sell advertising themselves, you can get a pretty good sense of what it would cost to reach a particular audience, and you can get a pretty good CPM. And then it's just a matter of attaching your brand value and trying to determine what that's worth to a particular sponsor. All right, so if we're comfortable with where digital assets fit into our overall sponsorship portfolio, and we have we've come to grips with how to go about pricing it. wanted to spend some time kind of getting into how to actually go about selling digital. And it really doesn't differ that much from your more traditional sponsorship assets. Um, just like those traditional sponsorship assets, your digital assets really should be viewed as part of a larger campaign and not just a collection of individual siloed assets. So, it's very common and we see it a lot where, things will be included where it's, as part of your sponsorship package, you get a Facebook post. Well, one individual Facebook post or two individual Facebook posts, it's not going to really do a lot and it's not really going to have the reach. So it's got to really be viewed as a campaign. Um, so when you're getting ready to sell digital, it starts with the target audience. Who is your sponsor trying to reach? And you understand your channels, you're better than anybody. So your website, your Facebook page, your Instagram account, they all are going to reach slightly different audiences. So you want to try to understand who's the audience that the sponsor is trying to reach and who is what are the audiences that I have on my different channels. So secondly is the ideation, and this is really what it comes down to is the message that the sponsor is hoping to deliver to the audience. So what's a creative way that you can deliver that message in a way that will be remembered and will resonate with the audience? This is the fun part really of sponsorship and marketing is coming up with those creative concepts and how to deliver that message to the right audience. Um, so the next stage there, the third bubble there, platforms. Not depending on the target audience, it may make sense to include a platform. It may make sense to not include a platform. If you have a message that's maybe targeted more at a B2B audience, then maybe your LinkedIn account is a better way to incorporate that sponsor. If it's more targeted at families, maybe it's more of the Facebook page. If it's a younger audience, maybe it's the Snapchat or the Instagram stories that are a better fit. So you want to try to understand, based on the target audience and the type of way that we want to deliver that message, what are the platforms that are going to best allow us to do that? From there, it's really into your regular sales process. So your scope and production. So once you've got your idea, the audience you need to try to target, the platforms that you're going to use. You want to take a look, how what's the production on this gonna be? So sometimes people will think that digital is really attractive because it has a higher margin. There's less production costs, things like that. But where those production costs for tangible things like signs and things like that might come down in a lot of cases because we're talking a lot more about content and custom branded content. The production costs on putting together videos or photos or graphic design or things like that, they're going to go up a little bit. So you want to scope that out, figure out how much this campaign is going to cost you to deliver. And you also want to take a look at, do I have the resources to fulfill that internally? Do I need to look external to another partner to help me fulfill that? So you want to scope out that whole production. From there, your sponsorship assessment, your meeting with your prospect, you're determining that there's a right fit in terms of this campaign. You're also taking a look at this from your valuation formula standpoint, and you are making sure that when you factor in the scope and production costs, and you factor in the CPMS and the target audience and your brand value, what is this campaign worth? You get into your sales process, which we've talked about all throughout the course. Hopefully you're closing that sale, you're executing, and then you're tweaking and optimizing. And the tweaking and optimizing is something that really comes inherent with digital in particular. It's a little bit harder to do that when you're talking about something like a static sign. Not much you can really tweak or optimize there. But when you're talking about digital and you're getting really that real time feedback in terms of how things are performing, what's working, what's not, there's an opportunity to tweak your campaign as you go throughout the process, so that when you get to the end, hopefully you've maximized the return on investment for that sponsor. Again, the execution portion, keep in mind, is a campaign, so it's going to carry forward throughout. Whether it's even if it's a one-off event, you may have some particular digital activations that take place during the event time. It may carry throughout the entire year. So you also want to keep that in mind during your scope and production is, I have to have somebody make fulfill this campaign throughout the entire calendar year. So, keeping that in mind as well. So that really kind of covers how to sell digital sponsorship. As you can probably tell, it's not that different from traditional sponsorship. Um, there's a slight, variations here and there, but for the most part, it is pretty similar. One thing I did want to go back to that kind of forgot to mention on the valuation side of things is, you may be thinking that, I don't really have any historical data to go on. I know what a sign is worth at our event because I've sold signs to our event in the past. Well, in the case of digital, one thing you can do is benchmark against some other similar content that you've put out there. So if it's an Instagram post, or if a big part of your digital campaign involves posts on Instagram, well, what does an average post on Instagram get? What is an average post when you have tied a sponsor to it? Have you seen any difference in the reach that post has gotten? And then you can really just extrapolate it out from there and really project it pretty accurately what the reach is going to be with a particular campaign. All right, so now getting into really what does digital sponsorship look like. So we're going to take a look at some examples of some different digital sponsorships. So this chart here, taken from the Canadian Sponsorship Landscape Study, talks about different activation tactics that sponsors utilize, and as you can see, pretty all over the place. Tastes tend to change quite a bit year over year. But the second one there, the pink line, the branded content, that one's been on a bit of an upswing. A little bit stagnant the last 2 years, but and we'll see what happens when the latest Canadian Sponsorship Landscape Study comes out, but. So you can see here, anyways, it's been on a pretty big upswing since 2014. And branded content is a big thing when it comes to digital sponsorship. And you can see the definition there. Branded content is the practice of marketing via the creation of content that is funded or outright produced by an advertiser. So this is the content that we're, as properties, we're building it with the sponsor in mind. So and we'll get into some of the differences there, but it's about delivering a message to the right audience in a way that's going to stand out and be remembered and resonate with that audience. Again, keep in mind that the branded content, how that kind of differs from, say, advertising, which is also on the chart there, is that you know advertising is more about a push message out. It's their message, the sponsor's message. In the case of branded content, it's much more about the property developing content that they know is going to be interesting and entertaining and engaging to their audience, and then building in a sponsor in a more seamless way so that it doesn't feel like an ad as much. So some different ones. We talked a little bit about branded content. Uh, Probably what most people are familiar with is what would be the first one, which would be sponsored content. Now, this is the stuff where we're attaching a sponsor to something that maybe there's a loose connection to their brand and to their services or products that they provide. But for the most part, really what it's about is it's about putting sponsor messages onto things that you were going to do anyways. So, a pretty common one that we see across sports is very often you'll have kind of a recap, by the numbers type of thing with a sponsor logo on it. And in some cases, that sponsor is, maybe the numbers connection makes the connection. But for the most part, the team was going to do that anyways. And here's a way that we can attach a sponsor to it and do that. So those ones you're going to see much more high frequency. The value is not necessarily as high as some of the other things we're going to touch on, but it can be a good way to incorporate a sponsor into something that you were going to do anyways, and fans are expecting. Some examples of that, watermarks of a sponsor logo on a video or on a graphic, pre-roll ads or something like that. Those ones are kind of examples of that sponsored content. Next is kind of a sweepstakes or a promotion, and these are ones where you're running a contest or running some sort of something with a call to action to your audience that's tied to a sponsor. Now, this one you want to be careful that you want to keep the frequency moderate. You don't want to overdo it with the sweepstakes and promotions. Anytime you're asking your audience to take an action, there can be some fatigue if you're doing that over and over and over again. So you do want to limit that in terms of its frequency. However, there's a lot more value to this for the sponsor than just the sponsored content. Hopefully, your sweepstakes or promotion or contest or whatever it is a little bit more closely tied to the sponsor in some way. It's a little bit more engaging because you're giving away a cool prize, or you're asking your audience to take some sort of action. So a little bit more engaging. It can be a great way to generate leads for the sponsor if that's one of their objectives. So higher value, but you want to be careful on the frequency with those. Lastly is the custom branding content, and that's really what we got into on the last slide here, and that's really what sponsors in a lot of ways are really interested in. Yes, there's going to be a lower frequency, and why there's going to be lower frequency is because it takes a little bit more time um, to actually put that together. It's a lot easier to put a sponsor's logo onto to something you were already going to do. In this case, it's takes more time and resources to produce that really high quality content. The focus of this content really is to entertain and engage your audience in a way that integrates the sponsor in some kind of natural way. So it needs to be content that would really get your audience excited and want to consume that content, as opposed to feeling like they're forced to, which is kind of typical with like your 30-second spots on TV or something like that, where it's more interruptive. It kind of takes you away from the experience. This really should be integrating a sponsor into the experience itself. That naturally is going to have the highest value, because that's where the sponsors can really try to have some of that goodwill that people place onto your brand, have that rub off on them because of the association they're trying to draw between the two. So here's a quick kind of case study from the Toledo Walleye of the ECHL, one of uh, our rivals in the ECHL with the Brampton Beast, and they did this last season or 2 seasons ago with a local jewelry partner of theirs. So what they did was, this was an Instagram campaign, and they took a picture of a diamond ring and they hid it somewhere in the picture. And what they did was they would put these out on Instagram and ask fans to comment on the post where the ring was for a chance to win X. This campaign in particular generated just over 34,000 impressions, and was sold for about $4,000, bringing it in at a $116 CPM. So the CPM, you may be looking at that, that's a lot higher than if the jeweler had decided to run that campaign through Google or Facebook. That's a lot higher CPM. But because of the association with the team's brand and the ability to use the team's content, so if they did run that campaign on Google or Facebook, they wouldn't have necessarily been able to use the picture here of the team and draw that association. So maybe it would have been cheaper in terms of the CPM, but is it really going to have the same impact and engagement that it does doing the campaign here with the team? And that's really the reason for that higher CPM. So this is a perfect example of a sweepstakes content, because there was that call to action for fans. In this case, they've asked fans comment on the post, where do you see the ring, for a chance to win X. So it's really an example of that sweepstakes content. And as you can see, it's branded up in the top right corner. So while kind of all sweepstakes content is likely sponsored content, not all sponsored content is a sweepstakes content. And the same applies to that true custom branded content. It's going to have that sponsored content elements, but it takes it to another level. Great. So today's takeaways really are, digital. It's where the most attention is these days. It's where your fans are spending a good portion of their time in events, teams, and they, we typically have an advantage over brands in terms of attracting people's attention on mobile and social, because, we're the things that people engage with on their leisure time, where their passions, where their hobbies, things like that. So, compared to, a brand, it's it's going to be much more likely that someone's going to want to follow you as opposed to a brand account. So that's really where the appeal is to sponsors to incorporate their brands into your messaging, because they know that's where there's a good audience, and hopefully an audience that overlaps a lot with their target audience. So while digital is ever changing and it's new for a lot of people, it's really a lot more similar to traditional sponsorship than it is different. So you don't want to be intimidated by digital. It's something we know it's not going anywhere. It's changing all the time. So it's tough to say if anybody's full expert on any of this kind of stuff, but you don't want to be intimidated by it. Lastly, keep in mind that you're selling the audience and the content. You're not selling the channel. So, we see it a lot where in a sponsorship proposal there might be a mention of social media posts or website logos, and those are really more selling the channel. And what you really want to be doing, like we talked about with the branded content and the sweepstakes and things like that, is you want to be selling the content as opposed to selling the channel. Great. So we will check to see if we've got any questions. All right. So if you do have any questions, anything about digital sponsorship or anything that we've talked about throughout the entire series, please feel free to send us an email, info@cosmosports.com. If you go to our team page, you can find all of our emails there, including mine and Carrie's. So please feel free to email either of us with any questions you may have about this topic or any others. So with that, we'll wrap up today's episode. Our next and our final episode of the series is going to take place on Wednesday, May 30th. So 2 weeks from today. It's at 2 p.m. And we're going to explore naming rights and how to approach selling those unique pieces of inventory. Right. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks very much to Central Counties Tourism and Sport Durham for hosting the webinar series, and for allowing myself and Carrie and Ken and everybody here at Cosmos Sports and Entertainment to share some of our knowledge and expertise with you. Again, if anybody has any questions or about anything related to sponsorship, please feel free to email us at info@cosmosports.com. So thanks very much, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.